past 4 years, it becomes clear that we have stepped up our video game graphics a lot. Look at these two games, Space Invaders and Forza Horizon 5. One has 3 colors and big blocky pixels, while the other looks as realistic as real life. I'm Stephen Martell, and in this talk, I will be explaining graphical improvement, not art styles. There are plenty of games that show stylized art, but aren't considered realistic or detailed. Two examples are Hollow Knight and the Paper Mario franchise. Now, the first game that started off this graphics stream was Galaxian. Created in November of 1979, it was the first game to use red, green, and blue color graphics, RGB for short, making for an exciting play in 1979. In the year 1980, Pac-Man released in arcades. Pac-Man's art was amazing for its time. The fruit had highlights in it, which made it slightly more detailed, and the ghost expressions in color helped explain what was going on. 1984 was when I, Robot was released, and what makes it special, it was the first game to use 3D polygon graphics. Other games that were classified as 3D created the illusion by using graphical projecting, which wasn't real 3D. In a nutshell, graphical projecting is a process in which an imaginary three-dimensional object is projected onto a 2D plane. Then, in 1988, Mega Man 2 released, and compared to Pac-Man, art had clearly stepped up tremendously. First off, the sprites were bigger, and unlike Pac-Man, Mega Man 2 had a background, and every single sprite had highlights in it, all things leading to even more realism. Polygons are used in computer graphics to compose 3D shapes, hence the name polygon graphics. And depending on what the computer can handle, the amount of polygons can vary. In iRobot, it was around 2,000. Modern-day video games can handle greater than 1 billion polygons. Both Pac-Man and Mega Man 2 were made with one different art type, pixel art. Pixels are squares on a TV or computer screen that display certain amounts of red, green, and blue color to make any color imaginable. As the resolution gets higher, the amount of pixels does as well. But in the 1980s, screens were low resolution, so games had a smaller amount of pixels, and the ones that were there were big and blocky. Pixel art is made by taking pixels of a game and coloring them to make characters, backgrounds, and much more. As you can see from these photos, pixel art can be pretty detailed. Also, you really only have 3 perspectives: bird's eye, side, and front perspective, making it impossible to create real 3D. Adding on to that, shading and detailing can be especially hard to make look good. In 1992, Street Fighter II was released to the world with some of the best pixel art ever. The characters in Street Fighter II had many pixels and were almost as close to humans as pixel art could get. The backgrounds in the game were very big and had a lot of detail. Resident Evil 2 was released in 1998 or 1998 and was on the upper echelon of 3D graphics in the 90s. Everything in the game had no jutting out polygons and only some obvious pixels. Starting off the new century in 2000 was Final Fantasy IX. This game's characters were as smooth as butter, and the backgrounds were masterfully pre-rendered. Pre-rendering is not rendering in real time. The rendering is pre-recorded and played back. This makes it look a bit funny. One thing that was especially great about Final Fantasy IX was that no obvious pixels could be seen, a huge leap from where we were only 2 years ago. Far Cry 2 was released in 2008 and was one of, if not the most best-looking game in the 2000s. Everything was absolutely perfect. The light, glare, and nature looked so good, it was almost as if it was real life. The 3D models were perfect. No jagged edges, no obvious pixels, and loads of details. You may have noticed that the video games at the start and the end of the 2000s had a bigger difference in quality compared to the difference between video games and other decades. And the reason behind that is because of new techniques. In the 90s and early 2000s, pre-rendering was used to speed up creating 3D models. Although it was faster, pre-rendering was only supposed to be used for parts of movies and images, and therefore did not bode well for video games. In the late 2000s, they transitioned into other stuff and made it way better. Not only was pre-rendering kicked to the curb, lighting, gloss, and textures got much better. 2010s were quite an interesting decade because games didn't improve graphics-wise much, but rather the techniques used to make them got easier to use. But that doesn't mean there weren't some improvements. In 2018, the first game to use ray tracing was released, Battlefield 5. Ray tracing was by far the most important thing about this game, because it made everything look more realistic and detailed. To put it simply, ray tracing is a technique for modeling light transport. Anything to do with light, whether it was motion blur, reflection, or refracting, was made better by ray tracing. Finally, we come to the 2020s. And in the year 2020, Microsoft Flight Simulator was released to the world with overwhelmingly positive response. The reason why this game looks so stunning is because of the next generation consoles and Microsoft only having to focus on scenery, airplanes, and airports, so they can make those things look extra good. Now, the game I started this with, Forza Horizon 5. The nature is very realistic in Forza Horizon 5, and the team behind it spent weeks in Mexico studying the clouds and plants. Forza Horizon 5 also included ray tracing for the cars, which only added to the detail. Throughout the years, we have had major advancements in graphics, color, 3D, rendering, resolution, and ray tracing, just to name a few. And just to think, this all started with a few pixels. Thank you for listening.